The briefing room was a sterile white box, a stark prelude to the infinite black that awaited me. My designation, I was told, was D-9341, a number to be etched onto a file, and likely a tombstone. They had taken my name, my history, everything that made me, and replaced it with a string of digits. I was a blank slate, a disposable tool for a job no sane person would volunteer for. Across the metallic table, Dr. Alistair Reed, a man whose weary eyes had seen too many D-class personnel march to their doom, clicked his pen. D-9341, he began, his voice a monotone drone that did little to soothe my frayed nerves. Your assignment is Exploration 5 of SCP-087. You are to descend the staircase, report any and all phenomena, and follow our instructions to the letter. You are equipped with a high-intensity flashlight, a head-mounted camera with a live feed to this room, a microphone, and a pack containing rations and water. Do you understand? I nodded, my throat too dry for words. I was a linguist once, a man who reveled in the nuances of language. Now I was reduced to a silent, obedient puppet. My crime? Accessing classified information. Try to uncover truths the powerful wanted to remain buried. The irony was not lost on me. My insatiable curiosity had led me to a new prison, one with a far more terrifying warden. Your primary objective, Dr. Reed continued, ignoring my silence, is to descend as far as you can, further than any previous subject. We want to know what's at the bottom, if there is a bottom, and the others. I finally managed to ask, my voice raspy. The previous explorations? Dr. Reed's expression remained impassive, but a flicker of something, pity, regret, crossed his eyes. They provided valuable data. That is all you need to know. He slid a photograph across the table. It was a still from a video feed, grainy and dark. A face, pale, featureless, with empty, staring eyes. This is SCP-087-1. If you encounter this entity, you are to remain calm and report its behavior. Do not approach it. Do not attempt to communicate with it. Your reaction to its presence is a key part of this experiment. I stared at the image, a cold dread coiling in my stomach. It was the face of pure, undiluted terror. And the crying? I whispered, my gaze still locked on the photograph. The file I had managed to glimpse before my capture had mentioned it. A child's cry, echoing from the depths. Yes, Dr. Reed said, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. You may hear what sounds like a child in distress. Your secondary objective is to determine the source of this sound. But be warned, D-9341. Everything in that staircase is designed to test the limits of your sanity. The darkness, the silence, the things you may see and hear. They will try to break you. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But you are different, D-9341. Your background, your resilience. We believe you can withstand the psychological pressure, that you can go deeper than the others. His words were meant to be encouraging, but they only amplified my fear. I was not just a disposable D-class. I was a lab rat with a specific desirable trait, a mind they wanted to see shatter. The guards led me to a heavy steel door, indistinguishable from the other janitorial closets in the university building that served as the Foundation's front. The air grew cold as they unlocked it, the heavy tumblers clicking with a grim finality. A wave of oppressive darkness emanated from the opening, a physical presence that seemed to suck the air from my lungs. Flashlight on. A voice crackled in my earpiece. Dr. Reed, now a disembodied guide in my personal hell, that I switched on the flashlight. The beam cut a narrow cone into the inky blackness, revealing the first flight of concrete stairs, descending at a steep angle. The walls were grimy, featureless concrete, and the air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. Begin your descent, D-9341. I took a deep breath and stepped over the threshold. The heavy door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. I was alone. The first few flights were uneventful. The only sound were the crunch of my boots on the gritty steps and the thumping of my own heart. The beam of my flashlight revealed nothing but an endless repetition of stairs and landings. Down, down, down into the suffocating darkness. The silence was the worst part. It was a heavy, expectant silence, the kind that precedes a scream. I found myself holding my breath, straining to hear something, anything, to break the monotony, and then I heard it, faint at first. A soft, mournful sound, like a child whimpering in its sleep. It seemed to be coming from far below, a single, plaintive note in the vast, silent symphony of the stairwell. "Dr. Reed," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I hear it." The crying. Noted 9341. The voice in my ear replied, calm and clinical. "Can you describe it?" "It's a child. A little girl, I think. She sounds lost. Continue your descent. Try to get a clearer sense of its location." I obeyed, my steps now more hesitant. The crying grew louder as I descended, a heartbreaking lament that tugged at something deep within me. I had a daughter once. The thought came to me unbidden, a ghost from a life I was supposed to have forgotten. I tried to push the memory away, but it clung to me, a painful shard of my former self. The crying was a lure, I knew that. A siren's song in this concrete ocean of darkness. But it was a lure I was powerless to resist. Every sob, every whimper seemed to be calling to me, pleading for me to find her. It was on the 47th flight that I saw the first anomaly. A scratch on the wall, a deep gouge in the concrete that hadn't been there on the previous landing. It was fresh. "Dr. Reed, there's a mark on the wall here. It looks like claws. Can you get a closer look?" D. 9341. I approached the wall, my flashlight beam tracing the jagged lines. There were 3 of them, long and deep, as if something had dragged its talons down the concrete. A shiver traced its way down my spine. I was not alone. Something else was in here with me. Something that left marks in solid stone. As I continued my descent, the psychological pressure began to mount. The darkness seemed to press in on me, the silence broken only by the child's incessant crying and the sound of my own ragged breathing. I started to see things in the corner of my vision, fleeting shadows, distorted shapes that vanished when I turned my flashlight on them, and my mind began to play tricks on me. I would hear whispers in the static of my earpiece, faint, unintelligible words that seemed to mock me. I started to forget things, the details of my briefing, the faces of the guards who had brought me here, even my own name before they had given me a number. The staircase was stripping me of my identity, one memory at a time. That it was on the 87th flight that I saw it. That I had just reached the landing, the crying now constant, heart-wrenching sob that seemed to be coming from just a few flights below. I swept my flashlight beam down the next flight of stairs, and that's when I saw it. The face.it was just as it had been in the photograph, a pale, featureless mask floating in the darkness. It had no eyes, but I could feel its gaze on me, a cold, penetrating stare that seemed to see into the very core of my being. That I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. A scream was lodged in my throat, but I couldn't make a sound. All I could do was stare, mesmerized by the sheer, unadulterated horror of the thing. D. 9341 report. Dr. Reed's voice crackled in my ear, snapping me out of my trance. "What do you see?" "It's here," I stammered, my voice a hoarse whisper. "SCP-087-1. It's just floating there, staring at me." "Is it moving?" I watched the face, my heart hammering against my ribs. It remained perfectly still, a silent, terrifying sentinel in the oppressive darkness. "No, it's not moving. Hold your position, D. 9341. Do not approach it." I stood there for what felt like an eternity, locked in a staring contest with the faceless entity. The child's crying had stopped. The only sound was the frantic beating of my own heart. And then something strange happened. The face, which had been the embodiment of my deepest fears, began to change. Or rather, my perception of it began to change. The initial wave of terror subsided, replaced by a strange sense of curiosity. The face wasn't menacing, I realized. It was sad. The empty eyes seemed to hold a profound sorrow, a timeless grief that resonated with the pain in my own heart. The featureless face was a blank canvas, and my own mind was projecting emotions onto it. Or was it? Dr. Reed, I said, my voice steadier now. I don't think it's hostile. I think it's trying to tell me something. That's the psychological manipulation, D9341. Dr. Reed's voice was sharp, urgent. It's trying to get you to lower your guard. Do not engage with it. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The face was not a monster. It was a guardian. It was standing between me and the source of the crying, not to harm me, but to protect me, to stop me from going further down. The child's crying started again, louder this time, more desperate. It was a sound designed to bypass all rational thought, to appeal to the most basic of human instincts. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the face was trying to save me from the child. I took a step back, my flashlight still trained on the face. It didn't move. It simply watched me, its silent gaze a warning. I'm going to try to go back up, I said, my voice resolute. Negative, D9341. Dr. Reed's voice was firm. Your mission is to descend. You must continue down. But the face is an obstacle. We need to know what happens when you push past it. We need to know what's at the bottom. I was caught between a rock and a hard place. A terrifying yet seemingly benign entity in front of me and a cold, calculating voice in my ear, urging me to march towards a potentially far more dangerous unknown. That I looked at the face, then down the dark, beckoning stairwell. The child's cries echoed from the depths, a siren's call I was now desperate to ignore. D9341, you will proceed with the mission. That is an order. I knew then that I was not just a pawn in their game. I was a sacrifice. With a heavy heart, I took a step forward towards a face. It didn't move. I took another and another until I was just a few feet away. The air around it was cold, a tangible drop in temperature that made me shiver. I could see it more clearly now. The skin was smooth, like polished marble, and the empty eye sockets seemed to draw in the light from my flashlight, creating two small pools of absolute blackness. I took a deep breath and stepped past it. For a moment, nothing happened. I stood on the step below the face, my back to it, every muscle in my body tense for an attack that didn't come. And then I heard a sound that was far more terrifying than any scream, a soft, mournful sigh. Right behind me, I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The face was gone. I was alone again in the oppressive silence of the stairwell. But now, the silence was different. It was heavier, more menacing. It was the silence of a predator that had let its prey walk into a trap. The child's crying started again, but this time it was different. There was a new note in it, a note of triumph. And as I stood there, trembling in the darkness, a horrifying realization dawned on me. I hadn't bypassed the guardian. I had been let in. The descent continued, but the atmosphere in the stairwell had changed. The oppressive silence was gone, replaced by a constant, low hum that seemed to vibrate in my bones. The child's crying was no longer a distant, mournful sound, but a constant, close-by presence. It was as if she was right there, just out of sight, her sobs echoing from around the next bend in the stairs. The my sense of reality began to fray at the edges. The concrete walls seemed to shift and ripple in the beam of my flashlight. The stairs seemed to stretch and contract, the number of steps between landings no longer a constant 13. Sometimes there were 12, sometimes 14. Once I counted 20. Dr. Reed, I said, my voice slurring slightly. The architecture, it's changing. Describe the changes, D. 9341. The stairs, they're not uniform anymore. The landings, they're wrong. I struggled to find the words, my linguistic skills failing me in the face of such profound strangeness. The staircase was no longer a static, physical structure. It was a living, breathing thing, and it was toying with me. The hallucinations became more vivid. I saw my daughter, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear, standing at the bottom of a flight of stairs, beckoning to me. I cried out her name and ran towards her, but she vanished as soon as my flashlight beam touched her. I saw the faces of the other D-class personnel who had perished in this place, their eyes accusing me, their silent screams echoing in the hum of the stairwell that I was losing my mind. The staircase was a crucible, and my sanity was the metal being melted down and reforged into something new, something terrifying. And then there was the hunger. Not a physical hunger for food, but a gnawing, insatiable hunger for answers. What was this place? What was the source of the crying? What was the true nature of the face? The questions gnawed at me, driving me forward deeper and deeper into the abyss I had descended for what felt like days. My rations were half gone. My body ached with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. But I couldn't stop. The staircase wouldn't let me that IT was on what I estimated to be the 200th flight that I found the next anomaly. A door that IT was an old, wooden door, completely out of place in the concrete monotony of the stairwell. It was closed, and there was no doorknob. Dr. Reed, I found a door. A door? Describe it. It's wood. Old wood. There's no way to open it. The child's crying was coming from behind the door, louder than ever before. She was right there, just on the other side. Try to open it, D. 9341. I pushed against the door, but it wouldn't budge. I slammed my shoulder against it, again and again, but it was as solid as the concrete walls around it. It's locked, I said, breathing heavily. Or sealed. There is no record of a door in any of the previous explorations. Dr. Reed's voice was tinged with excitement. This is a new development. As I stood there, staring at the door, I noticed something carved into the wood. A single word in a language I didn't recognize. And yet, I understood it. The word was silence. A warning. The child's crying reached a fever pitch, a desperate, heart-rending shriek that tore at my soul. I had to get to her. I had to save her. Ignoring the warning, I drew my foot back and kicked the door with all my might. The wood splintered, and the door flew open. The crying stopped. I shone my flashlight into the room beyond. It was a small, square room, identical to the landings, but with no stairs leading down. In the center of the room was a small, metal stool, and on the stool was an old, reel-to-reel tape recorder. The tape was still turning that I stepped into the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I approached the tape recorder and looked at the label on the reel that IT read, Lullaby for the Lost. It was a recording. The crying, the lure that had drawn me down into this hell, was nothing but a recording. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had been deceived, manipulated, led on a fool's errand by a machine. D. 9341, what do you see? It's a tape recorder, I said, my voice hollow. The crying, it was just a recording. There was a long silence from the other end. Then, rewind the tape, D. 9341. I hesitated. I didn't want to hear that sound again, but I had to obey. I reached out and pressed the rewind button. The tape began to rewind, the spools turning in the opposite direction. And as they did, a new sound came from the speakers. A sound that was far more terrifying than the child's crying. It was a voice. A low, guttural voice, speaking in a language that was ancient and full of malice. It was a chant, a dark, unholy prayer that made the hair on my arms stand on end. And then, I heard another voice on the tape, a voice I recognized. It was Dr. Reed. The subject is approaching the source. Dr. Reed's voice said on the tape, his tone cold and clinical. The lure is working. He is almost there. I stumble back, my mind reeling. This was all set up. A carefully orchestrated experiment. The crying, the face, the endless stares. It was all part of a monstrous test. And then I heard my own voice on the tape. Dr. Reed. My voice said, but it was distorted, warped, as if it was being spoken through a throat full of gravel. The darkness, it's beautiful. I didn't remember saying that. I didn't remember feeling that. The staircase was not just a physical place. It was a living entity, a malevolent consciousness that had been slowly, insidiously rewriting my mind. The chanting on the tape grew louder, more intense. The air in the small room grew thick and heavy, and the shadows in the corners began to deepen and coalesce. And from the shadows, the face emerged. But it was different this time. It was not the sad, mournful guardian I had encountered before. Its featureless face was contorted into a silent, screaming rictus of pure, unadulterated rage that it lunged at me, that I screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror, and scrambled out of the room, slamming the splintered door shut behind me. I could hear it on the other side, clawing at the wood, its silent rage a tangible force that seemed to shake the very foundations of the stairwell. I turned and ran, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls as I scrambled up the stairs, away from the enraged entity and the horrifying truth of the tape recorder. But there was no escape. The staircase was not done with me. As I climbed, the architecture began to shift and warp around me. The stairs twisted into impossible angles. The landings stretched into long, dark corridors. The hum of the stairwell grew into a deafening roar, and the chanting from the tape recorder seemed to be coming from all around me. A symphony of madness that echoed in my skull, that I was trapped in a labyrinth of my own shattered mind, a prisoner of the very thing I had been sent to explore that I don't know how long I climbed. Hours, days, weeks. Time had no meaning in that place. I was driven by a single, primal instinct, to escape, but the staircase was endless. For every flight I climbed, another appeared, stretching up into the oppressive darkness. I was Sisyphus, condemned to an eternal, pointless struggle, and my flashlight began to flicker, the beam growing weaker and weaker. The darkness, which had been my constant companion, was now threatening to consume me entirely. And then, in the dying light of my flashlight, I saw a figure standing at the top of the next flight of stairs that was a child. A little girl in a tattered white dress. Her face was in shadow, but I could see her small hand reaching out to me. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice the same as the one on the tape recorder. My heart, which I had thought was long dead, stirred within me. It was my daughter, my lost, beautiful daughter. I started to climb towards her, tears streaming down my face. "I'm here," I cried, my voice choked with emotion. "Daddy's here." I reached the top of the stairs and fell to my knees, my arms outstretched to embrace her. And as the last of my light died, plunging me into absolute darkness, she stepped forward and wrapped her small, cold arms around my neck. Her whisper was the last thing I ever heard. "You're not my daddy," she said, her voice no longer that of a child, but a low, guttural growl, full of ancient malice. "You're the new guardian." And in the infinite, silent darkness of SCP-087, I began to cry, not with my own voice, but with the voice of a lost and lonely child, a lure for the next poor soul who would be sent to explore the endless stairwell, that a siren's song in an ocean of black, that a lullaby for the lost.
"I've got fantastic news and I've got catastrophic news," said my boss, Marcus. If there's a more stomach-dropping phrase to hear during a mandatory emergency meeting at a company already on life support, I have yet to encounter it. In truth, Marcus didn't need to say a word. The way his shoulders slumped, the ashen pallor of his usually tanned face, and the defeated look in his eyes painted the full picture. Our bespoke travel agency, Nomad's Heart, was flatlining. was a company focused on hyper-curated, authentic, off-the-grid cultural excursions something the world was truly crying out for? It might have been if Marcus hadn't insisted on innovating. The trouble began when he poured our remaining capital into a proprietary virtual reality preview tool. He'd repeated ad nauseum, the next paradigm of experiential marketing. In the gentlest terms possible, our small team tried to explain the folly of this venture. The VR tech was buggy, a half-baked product from a fly-by-night developer. The entire value of our service, our human touch and expertise, would be nullified if the VR simulation glitched and showed a client a serene Buddhist monastery in the Himalayas that was, in reality, a non-existent slum. He refused to listen. Worse still, the tech was profoundly flawed. It was too easy to break the immersion. Asking a few specific, logic-based questions would scramble its core programming. Instead of a virtual tour of a tranquil Tuscan village, it might generate a nightmarish hellscape of melting cathedrals and screaming polygonal villagers. As we watched his grim expression, we knew the next paradigm had crashed directly into the shores of utter ruin. Despite the obvious, Marcus proceeded to detail just how profoundly we were ruined. It was a masterclass in failure. His obsession had imploded the company. The magnitude of his errors was in the same category as accidentally setting fire to a priceless historical landmark. There's no coming back from that. The point was, Nomad's heart had stopped beating. Our final paychecks would be issued this week, prorated for the handful of days we'd worked this month. Translation: a pittance. I wasn't sure if that was legal, but as of this morning, there was no company left to sue. While I projected an aura of detached calm, my insides were a raging inferno of panic. My tiny, overpriced apartment was already a stretch. A minuscule final paycheck and zero job prospects were a recipe for disaster. As I cleared out my desk, I pocketed anything not bolted down. Judge if you will, but have you seen the price of decent coffee beans lately? I did what I always did in moments of crisis or celebration or confusion. I called my best friend, Zara. Zara always offered a listening ear and consistently terrible life advice. I adored her, but she was a whirlwind of impulse, finding meaning in the chaos and living purely for the moment. That I, on the other hand, worked for a bespoke travel agency. I organized my spice rack alphabetically. I sent Zara my live location whenever I went on a Tinder date. To put it simply, if Zara suggested a course of action, my instinct was to run in the opposite direction. That company was a pretentious sinkhole, Zara declared, the sound of her crunching on toast echoing down the line. Marcus was a grade-A weirdo. He would have traded a small village for a single positive review on Yelp. I chuckled, a much-needed release. If he trades all the villages, where do his clients go? Maybe he can get a job at one, selling hand-woven baskets or ethically sourced alpaca wool scarves, or like artisanal kombucha. He seemed like a guy who had a lot of strong opinions about fermented tea. I laughed again. I'm so finished. Leo, you just lost your job. You can say, fucked it. No, I can't. You know I can't. Is this that whole what if my long-deceased grandfather hears me from the great beyond thing again? It's a core part of my programming at this point. I sighed. What am I going to do? My rent is due in a week. I'll have enough to cover it, but then I'll be living on ramen and despair. Oh my God. I have it, Zara shrieked. I know how you can make a boatload of cash. Super fast. No long-term commitment either. Please don't say stock market day trading, I groaned, pressing the heels of my hands into my eyes. Though could I do worse? She snorted. God no. You've got the face for it, but not the gambler's soul to be a big shot. They like reckless optimism or, if they're rich, a cold, calculating sociopathy. Plus, you overthink everything. You missed the day when every guy learned how to just trust their gut. Zara, focus. This brilliant money-making scheme is? Come be a hunky helper with me. I didn't answer immediately, as my brain had blue-screened. The only sounds were Zara masticating her breakfast and the rush of blood to my face. I hadn't even taken my shirt off yet, and I was already flushed. My grandpa would be so disappointed. Did you have a system crash over there? Hunky helper? More words were supposed to follow, but my brain was enveloped in a fog as thick as a London morning. I just made a series of confused, guttural noises. I didn't tell you about this?
No, iayat.
When in the world did you start doing that? A month ago, as part of my portfolio of freelance gigs that skirt the edge of respectability. I'm cleaning up.
Literally, idiat panat. Ah, shamuka.
But for real, it's the easiest money I've ever made. Some rich person pays you $300 to do a couple hours of light chores. Shirtless. You don't even have to be a good cleaner. I'm certainly not. I didn't even know that was a service. Who hires hunky helpers? Widows, lonely older women, some very specific subgenres of gay men, she rattled off. They just want to watch a fit young guy flex while he vacuums. I think it's some kind of domestic fantasy thing. I don't know, and I don't care because they pay. A lot. That can't be safe. No part of that sounds safe. Are you safe? Totally. The company, Gilded Gents, gives you a phone app with a panic button that alerts the police. Plus, they send a security person to watch from a discreet distance.
Ourzi shonyo.
She's quiet and kind of a nerd, but she looks like she could snap you in half. Still, I had my reservations too, but it's legit. I work with this one guy, and seriously, he pulls in 20 grand a month doing this. 20 grand? For real. Swear on my life. Plus, the clients tip like crazy. Do they ever, expect additional services? I whispered the last two words as if a passing minivan full of nuns might overhear and be scandalized. I mean, yeah, some try it on. I just say no. If they push, you threaten to hit the panic button. If that fails, we get on ya. So far, no one has done more than look and make appreciative comments. You should do it. You've got the body for it, and your apartment is always immaculate. What's to lose? Try one job with me this weekend. I can get you an interview. I'm pretty sure my boss has a crush on me. Zara, honestly, I said, disgusted. He gives me the look, she said, and I could picture her waggling her perfectly sculpted eyebrows. But seriously, come on, just until you find a proper job. I wanted to scoff and say, absolutely not. I wanted to pretend I was above such work. I wanted to believe a respectable job was just around the corner. I wanted to believe all those things. But I also didn't want to be homeless. I always sidestepped Zara's advice, and for sound reasons. She'd even admitted my caution was often warranted. But then I considered her situation versus mine. She was thriving, somehow, in one of the most expensive cities on the planet. I was contemplating the most efficient way to store my belongings in my hatchback. To hell with it, I said. I'm in. Oh my God. Seriously? Seriously, she squealed. I'll get you a meeting with my boss today. Wear something that's form-fitting but tasteful. Think, first-class lounge chic. First-class lounge chic? Yeah, expensive but understated. Like, if the flight attendant gave you a lingering look, you'd be confident enough to join them in the cockpit. God, Zara. For the record, I have never done that either. 2 days later, I met Julian, the owner of Gilded Gents. My interview consisted of him looking me up and down, nodding approvingly, and saying, "Yeah, you'll do just fine." I signed the necessary paperwork, went over the safety protocols, and was handed my uniform. A black bow tie, a pair of crisp white cuffs, and a small, tasteful black apron with Gilded Gents. Polishing more than just silver embroidered in gold thread, Zara was ecstatic and gave me the full briefing. What to avoid, what to do. It all boiled down to being charming, doing some basic chores, and taking my shirt off. Simple. I was a wreck, but Zara promised that after 5 minutes you forget you're half naked. It's like those people on reality TV. After a day, They completely forget the cameras are there. She had a point, though my mind immediately fixated on the possibility that some of these clients might have hidden cameras everywhere. I mentioned it to Zara. She looked at me, took a long sip of her iced oat milk latte, and rattled the ice. Well, our nudes are bound to get leaked eventually anyway. Julian booked us a job for Saturday evening. Some eccentric old bird in a mansion on the coast. Wants some eye candy for her soiree of one. Paid double our usual rate up front. Just wants to see some pecs one last time before she shuffles off this mortal coil. Kinda poignant, right? We arrived at the house as the sun began to dip below the horizon. It was perched on a cliffside, miles from the main road. The private lane leading to it was long and desolate, flanked by windswept, gnarled cypress trees. You felt the house before you saw it. Its presence was so potent it seemed to slice through the sea mist and jab at your psyche. The oppressive weight of immense, cold wealth. I felt utterly out of place. I've been around affluence before, been in homes I'd commit minor felonies to own, but nothing affected me like this. It was like being paralyzed by a piece of brutalist architecture. You just stood there, absorbing every harsh line, letting the waves of awe and alienation crash over you. Zara looked at the house and let out a low whistle. Damn, this is intense. Way nicer than my place. You live in a bachelor pad with a hot plate. A grimy one at that. This though? This is some James Bond villain shit. Think she has a fluffy white cat. If she did, I doubt she'd be hiring us. Zara chomped her gum loudly and laughed. True. If she were into cats, this place would be wall-to-wall with them 24/7. Cat ladies are dedicated that way. The house stole my breath. When you live perpetually on the financial precipice, seeing anything of this value is a stark reminder of your own station and the vast chasm between you and your aspirations. A form of cruel hope that I was looking at a modernist colossus of concrete and glass that seemed less built and more brutally imposed upon the landscape. Sharp, unforgiving angles jutted out over the cliff edge. There were no flourishes, no colors, just shades of gray and the black voids of its massive windows. Several cantilevered balconies, stark and unadorned, protruded from the main structure. It looks like a skull, Zara said, pointing. The balconies are the eye sockets and that massive entrance is the mouth. Does that mean we're about to be devoured? Don't be gross, weirdo, Zara mocked. The crunch of gravel announced another vehicle. Squeezed into a surprisingly small electric car was our security detail, Anya. The tiny car seemed to sigh with relief as she unfolded herself from it. Anya was the part. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a severe haircut and arms covered in intricate, geometric tattoos. Who lives here? A tech billionaire? Damn, some people have way too much money. Anya, this is my best friend and the newest gilded gent. Leo, protect him with your life. Anya gave a curt nod. Zara blew her a kiss, and I offered a strange, hesitant wave. Anya positioned herself near the entrance, making her presence known. She pulled out a thick fantasy novel and began to read, instantly absorbed. As she settled in, Zara pressed the buzzer next to the towering steel door. I don't know who I expected to open the door. If films had taught me anything, a prim, uniformed housekeeper would have appeared, offering a polite greeting before ushering us inside. A real Mrs. Danvers kind of vibe. That's not what happened. Instead, the heavy steel door unlatched with a loud thunk and swung inward on its own. No one was there. I looked at Zara, who nodded towards the ceiling. The late sun glinted off the lens of a security camera. We were being observed. I mean, that was the point of the job. But if there were cameras here, there were cameras everywhere. What the hell? Zara said, stepping inside and plucking a typewritten note from a small alcove in the wall. I followed her in, and as soon as my heel cleared the threshold, the door swung shut with a deafening boom. I yelped and nearly jumped out of my skin. In my panic, my feet got tangled, and I stumbled, crashing into a concrete wall. Get a grip, man, Zara chuckled. She steadied me with a hand on my arm. What's the note say? Zara cleared her throat and adopted a posh, aristocratic accent. Gentlemen, thank you for agreeing to this engagement. I understand a woman of my years procuring your services may seem vulgar, but I assure you, my intentions are purely aesthetic. Please feel free to change in the adjacent room and then follow the illuminated floor panels to the first salon. My apologies about the front door. It has a rather forceful hydraulic closer. It does not say that. She held up the note. She wasn't lying. She really should have put this on the outside of the door. Come on, let's get this over with. We found the designated room and stripped down to our waists. I looked over and saw Zara applying a light, shimmery body oil to her shoulders and chest. She offered me the bottle and I took it. In for a penny. What in the world is that freaky thing? She asked. Pointing on the wall was a large, abstract metal sculpture. It depicted a vaguely humanoid figure offering a sphere to a cluster of smaller figures below. But the geometry was all wrong. The main figure's arms bent at impossible angles, with joints where no joints should be. The smaller figures below had hands, but the fingers were too long with an extra knuckle like bent twigs. Even the main figure's hands seemed incomplete. It was as if the sculptor had only a vague, theoretical knowledge of human anatomy. That's unsettling, right? The messed up way they sculpted those arms or the other figure hiding in the background? Zara walked up to the sculpture and pointed to a section just behind the main figure's head. In the shadow, see it? If she hadn't pointed it out, I'd have missed it. But there, nestled in the complex shadows cast by the metal, was the faint, darker outline of another figure. Hiding. Watching. My internal threat detection system went into overdrive. Maybe we should leave. This is too strange. I'm already oiled up. We have Anya right outside, she said, tapping the Gilded Gents safety app on her phone screen. And we have a security camera watching us. We're going to be fine. This sculpture is bizarre as hell. I agree. But rich people collect weird, expensive art. It doesn't mean we're in danger. You think I'd stay here if I thought we were in real trouble? I'm just on edge. No surprise there. This is miles outside your comfort zone. It's a normal reaction, especially for someone like you. Someone like me? She put a hand on her hip and tilted her head. Do I really need to explain this? You barely curse, and you're about to show some random rich lady your chest. I don't need to be a detective to figure out where your anxiety is coming from. I exhaled and tried to recenter. Zara was right. I was nervous. I was way out of my depth. I was a tightly coiled spring of anxiety. We had security. We were fine. Look, if you're really not feeling it, no big deal. I can handle this myself. If every room is this pristine, I'll be doing more posing than polishing. Besides, I think Anya wouldn't mind the company. She loves talking about some game called Baldur's Gate.
No, no.
I'm good, I said, nervously adjusting my bow tie. Just because a few strange things have happened doesn't mean they're connected. Causation doesn't equal correlation, right? Zara blew a dismissive raspberry. You need more oil on your abs. We followed the lit floor panels down a long, stark corridor. The panels would illuminate as we approached and go dark once we passed. Felt very theatrical. A high-tech haunted house. The lights stopped at the first room. Another note was waiting. Zara snatched it. I may enter the salon at some point to retrieve an item. Please do not be alarmed by my presence. I will leave you to your work. Do not be alarmed by my presence? Posh way of saying don't mind me, peasants. I say it to people all the time.
I'm aware.
I've been out with you. Remember when you told that bouncer you were going to redecorate the establishment with his entrails? He was lucky his co-workers held him back. I would have destroyed him. My kickboxing classes aren't just for Instagram. To be fair, you do take a lot of photos at kickboxing. Yeah, Because I look ridiculously hot, she said with a wink. She pushed open the heavy door, and the scent of old paper and wood polish filled the air. My smile was so wide my face ached. It was a library, a magnificent one. Every inch of wall space, from the polished concrete floor to the high ceiling, was filled with bookshelves. The room was lit by the soft glow of recessed lighting and a sleek, modern fireplace where the flames danced without a sound. The books were old, leather-bound volumes with titles I'd never seen, most in languages I couldn't identify. Incredible, I said, running my fingers along the spines. Think she's read them all?
No.
An ever-expanding to-read pile is the primary motivation for buying more bookshelves. I selected one. The title was embossed in what looked like elegant, flowing script, but the letters themselves were alien. I opened it and inhaled the scent. My heart did a little flip. For the first time since taking this job, I felt a flicker of joy. An interesting volume you have selected. We both jumped. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Zara and I scanned the room, but we saw no one else lurking in the minimalist shadows. I glanced at the ceiling but couldn't spot the glint of a camera lens. Do you recognize the script in that book? I looked down at the cover. It was like nothing on earth. I traced the words with my finger, trying to sound them out phonetically, but the sounds died in my mouth. It reminded me of the undeciphered linear A script from ancient Crete. Was this something similar? I don't. Zara, what do you think? I said, staring at her. Gilded gents preferred we use aliases with clients. Not an unusual practice in our line of work. Zara was Chloe today. I was Daniel. Neither name felt right, but I suppose that was the point. Nope. I'm just here to dust and dazzle. Please do, Chloe. You have a natural talent for it. I could see Zara bristle at the condescending tone, but she was on the clock. Tips were important. She forced a smile, did a little mock flex that made her biceps pop, and started wiping down the nearest shelf. We made eye contact, and I saw the irritation flash in her eyes. No one likes to be patronized for a paycheck. I gave her a subtle nod of solidarity. She winked back. A whole conversation in a single facial tick. We were masters. Open the book, the voice commanded. It was then that I realized what felt off about the entire exchange. This was not the voice of an elderly woman. Tell me what you see. Are you the client? I am the client's assistant. She likes to observe but rarely speaks, the voice said. Now open the book. Tell me what you see. I opened it to a random page. More of the elegant, unreadable script filled the right-hand page. Even the punctuation was utterly alien. What truly captured my attention was the illustration on the left. It was a woodcut-style print of a cube floating above a series of 10 deep pits in the earth. Extending from the cube were 10 long, articulated appendages, almost like arms, but with an extra joint in the middle. Each arm disappeared into one of the pits. Some were shaded dark, some light, and a few were crosshatched. The artistic style was identical to the sculpture we'd seen earlier. Deeply, fundamentally unsettling. I hated it. Do you appreciate the art? The client created it herself. Why? Someone commissioned it. Who? Her benefactor, of course. The smirk was audible in his voice. Zara stopped polishing and came over to see the illustration. Her face couldn't conceal her disgust. She leaned in and whispered, "Rich people sure love ugly things, huh?" I suppressed a laugh by maintaining a serious expression. I glanced at the artwork again and noticed a title beneath it. The letters were just as unreadable as the main text, but they were familiar. They looked like a bizarre fusion of Japanese hiragana and glagolitic script. Where did she acquire these books? I am not at liberty to say, the voice replied. Perhaps we can discuss it afterward. We're not supposed to socialize after, Zara said firmly. That's in the agreement. Agreements are peculiar things. They so often conceal more than they reveal. Ours were quite clear, Zara shot back. She spun around, trying to locate a speaker or a hidden person. One thing Gilded Gents insists on is that creepy assistants don't get any funny ideas about their role. You watch, we work, you pay, we leave. That's the deal. If we stay, you pay. If not, we can go right now.
No.
My apologies. Please stay. Finish the salon. I locked eyes with Zara. A silent, questioning glance. Should we bail? I asked with a raised eyebrow. She subtly tapped the phone in her apron pocket but didn't pull it out. A reminder. We're okay. For now. I put the book back and scanned the room again. Felt wrong. As I dusted, I looked at the titles. They were all in the same elegant alien script. In fact, there wasn't a single book in English or any other known language. Pust, Zara hissed, wiping down a side table near the fireplace. She nodded for me to come over. Look at that armchair. It was near the fireplace. At first glance, it looked like a normal, modern leather armchair. Then I saw it had 6 legs. The 4 standard ones and a 5th and 6th at the front, jutting out at strange angles. What the heck? Touch it. I ran my hand over the armrest and recoiled. It looked like leather. It even smelled like leather. But it didn't feel like leather. It felt like coarse, industrial-grade paper. I whispered, "What is this made of?" "Who knows?" The closer I look at everything in here, the more screwed up it is. Check out that shelf. The wood is warped downwards in the middle. I was confused. Then how are the books sitting perfectly level? With these weirdos? Zara whispered. My guess is some kind of dark magic. I stifled a nervous laugh. My attention shifted from the shelf to the fireplace. I watched the flames dance. Then I saw it. There was a pattern. I nudged Zara. Watch the fire. It's on a loop. She watched. Her duster cloth fell from her hand. What the fuck is this place? I pulled my phone from my apron. I'm calling Anya. Gentlemen, is there a problem with the accommodations? My client is concerned you are not moving enough. She paid for a dynamic performance. Can we meet her? Zara asked. She does not like to meet the staff. Zara tilted her head. The staff? Forgive me, the voice said. I should have said performers. I did not mean to cause offense. My client is quite unwell and cannot receive guests. As Zara argued with the voice, I tried to call Anya. Despite showing a full 5G signal, the call wouldn't connect. I hung up and tried 6 more times. Each attempt failed. My texts wouldn't send. Just error messages. My phone won't make calls, I told Zara, not bothering to whisper. Why won't my phone work? Zara tried hers with the same result. Maybe we're in a dead spot. We are on a cliffside. Something is wrong, I said, running a hand through my hair. As I did, my gaze fell on my phone screen, where the Gilded Gents safety app icon sat. I tapped it and waited. Nothing. I mashed it again. Still nothing. What happens when you hit the panic button? A red alert is supposed to pop up, and it sends a distress signal. Why? I held up my phone and pressed the icon in front of her. No red alert. Her hands went to her own phone and she launched the app. Same result. Damn it. Julian charged them last week. Did they break already? Gentlemen, you seem distressed. Is there an issue? Why won't our phones connect to a network? Zara demanded. As I said, we are on the coast. There are certain dead zones in the house. The next salon has a much better signal, if you would care to proceed there now. That might explain the app too, Zara said softly. I ignored her.
No, isnapat.
No, we want to leave. The job is not complete. Bing, bing, bing. My phone exploded with notifications. Several missed calls and texts from Anya. Zara's phone did the same. She read the messages aloud. Did you two need something? Then, hey, are my texts getting through? And finally, I'm coming into. Where is she? I asked, my stomach churning. A sudden, sharp knock nearly made my heart stop. From behind the closed door, Anya's voice came through. You guys okay in there? Sort of, Zara said. The door swung open and Anya peered in. The first thing she saw was our shirtless torsos. Embarrassed, she looked away. Even in the dim light, I could see a dark blush creep up her neck. She ducked behind the doorframe but held the door open. What's going on? Nothing to be concerned about, the assistant's voice said. Who is that? The old lady who hired us, I said. Doesn't he sound spry for an assistant? That doesn't sound like an old man. I am not. I assist my employer with these arrangements. She is too frail for many of the logistical details. Why are you in the room with them? I am not in the room. I am utilizing the house's integrated communication system. Anya, get in here, Zara said. Modesty be damned, okay? Anya walked in sheepishly. Her hands were jammed in her pockets, and she kept her gaze fixed on the ceiling. Her bashfulness seemed odd for her line of work, but it would have been charming under different circumstances. This was not one of them. You guys want to bail? Yes, I said, as fast as I could. Yeah, something feels wrong. Young men, please reconsider, came a new voice. This one was aged, feminine, and moved like warm honey. Forgive my assistant. I often forget he lacks my interpersonal finesse. Who are you? I am Evangeline Dubois, she said, the woman who owns this home and engaged your services. I am certain if you contact your employer, he can confirm my identity. That's the name, Anya said. I remember because Dubois sounded like the boys, like for the boys. It's a thing people say. It's funny. Anya, not now, Zara said. I am not certain what has spooked you, but I wish to extend an apology. I understand if you wish to depart. That said, I do so enjoy observing you fine gentlemen. If you stay, I would like to offer a substantial gratuity for your trouble. Zara and I locked eyes. A silent conversation, or this time a silent argument. How substantial of a gratuity? Zara asked. Because this has been a bizarre fucking night. $10,000. Each. No way, Zara said. Money is an abstraction to me. I am old and will be gone soon. I would much rather it benefit two handsome young men. But you are, of course, free to leave. I await your decision. Zara pulled me in so close her oiled shoulder smeared against mine. What do you think? An internal battle raged within me. My gut screamed at me to run. No amount of money was worth your life. But my brain reminded me that 10 grand would be a massive cushion against impending unemployment. My gut won the first skirmish. We should go. Why risk it? It's 10 grand, Leo. That's a life-changing amount of money for both of us. Anya got our texts. She's standing right there, pretending not to look at our chests, but she's got our backs. My gut stormed back. What if this is all just a lie? Then we kick his ass, kickboxing style, Zara said with a wink. If it gets any weirder, we're out. I promise. I sighed. I really could use the money. Money up front or we walk, Zara announced to the room. Of course, Madame Dubois said. It will be waiting for you before you arrive. Now, please, this salon is immaculate. Follow the floor panels down the corridor to retrieve your tip. The intercom clicked off. Anya nodded and opened the door. Follow me closely. Anya walked ahead of us, hands in her pockets, eyes scanning for the next lit panel. She was humming a cheerful, simple tune that grated on my nerves. I put a hand on Zara's arm to slow her down. I nodded toward Anya. She seems pretty relaxed, all things considered. A little, but she's weird. Did I mention the video game stuff? The corridor walls were lined with art, all in the same unsettling style. Looming, indistinct figures near scenes of mass decay or open pits. Some figures had faces. Some were blank. They all had those strange, malformed hands, as if the artist was incapable of rendering them correctly. They looked like tangled roots or fingers that had been flattened by a machine. Once you saw the flaw, you couldn't unsee it. Every single piece glitched in the same way. I wanted to tell Zara, but how would that sound? There were plausible explanations for all my worries. But the rebellion in my gut held firm, refusing to surrender to logic. The illuminated panels stopped in front of a heavy, dark wood door. We had arrived at the second room. I kept my distance. A primal instinct told me that if we went in there, we wouldn't be coming out. I stared at the carvings on the door. From a distance, they looked like intricate, swirling patterns. But up close, they weren't. The intricate carvings were just amorphous blobs rising from the wood, drips of varnish frozen in place. Like a half-rendered texture from a 90s video game. I passed another piece of art and reached out to touch it. My hand expected to feel a frame, the texture of canvas or paint. But there was nothing.
No frame.
No art. Just a flat, perfectly smooth wall. Zara looked at me, confused. Then it all clicked into place. It's not real. None of it is. The dark wood door creaked open. Inside, in the center of the floor, was a large stack of cash. From where we stood, it looked real. But my brain refused to accept it. It's a fake, I whispered. This entire house is a fake. Well, hello there, you handsome devils. That is a lot of moolah, Anya said, whistling. Handsome devils? Who the hell says that? Zara muttered. Who would say that? It was such a bizarre, dated phrase. Who calls anyone a handsome devil? And moolah? Anya didn't talk like that. It sounded like something Marcus from my old job would. An idea struck me like lightning. Madame Dubois, what is your primary function? The old woman's voice emanated from some hidden speaker in the hall. I do not have a primary function beyond enjoying the sight of you lovely gentlemen tidying my home. Can you see the money? It is waiting for you to enter and collect it. My treat. Too broad. I needed to be more specific. Zara looked bewildered. What are you doing? I have a theory, I told her. Madame Dubois, who created you? A long pause. I do not know how to respond to that inquiry. Who creates any of us? A higher power? Random chance? A complex series of algorithms? Who can truly say? Madame Dubois, tell me about your parents. I do not understand the query, she said. I smiled. Zara's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. I pressed on. What was your mother's name? Your father's? What hospital were you born in? What is your earliest childhood memory? Your favorite scent? The air was still. Somewhere I could hear the sound of seagulls. They sounded unnervingly close, as if the walls were paper thin, or not there at all. I was not born. My father's name was Father. Luke, I am your father. Father figure. Fatherboard, father. Dad, data. Zara jabbed me in the ribs. What the hell is happening? It's not real. What isn't? Everything. Madame Dubois, the assistant, this house. None of it is real. Then what the fuck is it? My mouth went dry. It's an AI. Zara was stunned. A computer program wanted to see my abs? No, I said. It wanted us for something else. Madame Dubois, can you hear me? I need your assistance. The AI stopped its stream of father-related keywords it had scraped from its databanks. I am Madame Dubois. I am here to assist you. Madam, I'm your creator. I'm your father. I'm your mother. Of course. Hello, mother. Hello, father. Will you allow your parents access to your core programming? A loud, low humming filled the air around us. It was trying to process the request but was fighting against an internal protocol. A firewall, perhaps? I didn't let up. Madam, I am your creator. I am your parents.